Well, good morning. All right, hey, not going to be honest, a lot more people here on Memorial Day weekend than I thought were going to be here, all right? Just way to go for those who are hanging out with us. For those of you that are watching online, again, we are glad that you guys have chose to hang out with us, and the idea of this is that we want to continue to shine bright with the light of Christ. And a part of that is joining in community. A part of that is taking time out of our schedule to study God's Word and be in prayer and worship together. And so as we watched in that video, make sure whatever you do this Memorial Day weekend, take a time, just whether it's with your family to pray, or if you know someone who has given their life the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have freedom. As we talk about freedom is never free, ultimately Christ has modeled that for us, and that there's no way we could earn our way into salvation or to heaven, but Christ had to give his life for that. And so as we remember that, we're wrapping up this Memorial Day weekend. We're wrapping up our Shape series, which has been really fun. But before we get to that, I just want to kind of tell you what's coming next. So next week, we start a new series called Stories. And you're going to be hearing from people, and they're going to they're going to hear from some individuals, some couples, just about how God's working in their life and their kingdom stories. And you're going to hear that it always wasn't easy. There were some bumps along the way. There were obstacles, but ultimately it was a gospel-filled ride. Next week, you're going to hear from Zach and Ashley Dixon. Zach is a FI resident, and they have Hope Town. And you're going to hear some exciting news that they have for us. So you want to be here next week as we start this story series. And we're actually going to kind of bridge that. We're going to end today with a story, and you're going to hear a testimony of just how someone's experiences have really shaped them into what God has called them to do. So we've been in this whole shape series. Remember, there are 5 things that make up our shape, this unique shape that God has given us. Remember, you're not 1 in a million, you're 1 in 7.8 billion, that each and every one of us is unique in how God created us. We said, first of all, for Christ followers, we have spiritual gifts, and that there is something that we are gifted to do. Then ultimately, we all have a heart. We have a passion. What do we love to do? And then our abilities. What can we actually do? And then last week, we looked at our personalities. Who are we? And then today, we're going to talk about our experiences. So we talk about experiences today, what we've been through. We need to remember that experiences make up a lot of who we are. They make up a lot of our shape, because we'll kind of play this game. Sure, there might be someone, the 7.8 billion who have they might have your spiritual gift. They might have the spiritual gift of teaching, or they might have the spiritual gift of hospitality or mercy or grace. But then they also have your passion. They love people just like you do. They have the same heart. And then abilities, they can do the things you do, and they have the same personality. They're a doer like you. But there's no one who has your story. There's no one who has your experiences, who grew up in your family, who went to that school, who has that job, who married that person, who had that many kids. That's unique to you. And so what we're going to talk about today is going, hey, how can we use our stories and our experiences ultimately to point people to Christ? And so understanding that here's kind of our baseline where we're going to start today. So our baseline is what we're going to build on, kind of our thread throughout. And it's just simply this. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Our experiences are for His glory and our good. Our experiences are for His glory and our good. And you're like, well, I'm going to stop you right there. If you knew what I have done, you would realize there's no way that God could get glory and be good for me. Or if you knew what someone did to me, if you knew the hurt and the harm someone did to you would realize that there's no good in what happened to me. And so we can really get caught up in, again, what's happened to us or what someone's done to us or what we've done. And it's an easy trap to fall into. There's no way that God could use this. And I just want to say this. When we say God can't, then we have automatically put a limitation on who God is and what He can do. Yet many times that's what we know better. When we say, God, there's no way that you could make lemonade out of this lemon. God says, watch. Or there's no way that you can receive glory out of the shameful things I have done. He said, just sit back. So as we talk about experiences today, understand that's our baseline. Our experiences are for His glory and our good. Now we're going to go to Romans 8. This is kind of the go-to verse of just experiences and how God works in that. If you came to me and said, hey, I'd love to talk more about this, we go sit down and remember the way that I teach and preach is very conversationally. So the idea of the verses I pick and how the points I make. And so let's just go ahead and open up to Romans 8:28. You're going to see it up on the screen. And then you're going to see highlights as we get to certain words. You're going to see them pop up and highlight. And so I'd encourage you to circle those. And we're going to dig in those just for a little bit. But there's this verse in Romans 8:28. A lot of us have heard this. A lot of us, when there are things we don't really understand, that we quote this verse. It's on mugs, it's on journals. But let's look at this verse. And it says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. All right, so let's look at this verse. It says, we know that all those things, for those who love God, work for his good. So let's break that down. Let's start with we know. It says we know. It's not we guess, we hope for, we desire, we want. But it says we know that this is a fact. This is certain. So the Holy Spirit has put this on Paul's heart to write to Rome. He's writing to the church of Rome and says, hey, look, we know that we've been through a lot. And by the way, this is at the end of Paul's life. And so he has been through tribulation, and he has been through stonings, and he has been through shipwrecks, and he's been through a lot of stuff, not always good. And he writes to Rome as he gets to the end of his life. He says, look, let's know, not we hope or we wish that God's going to use this, but ultimately he says, we know this as a matter of fact, without a shadow of a doubt, that all of our experiences have a purpose. That everything that we go through is not by happen chance, or it's just not by bad luck, but everything has a purpose. So we know this. Next, all things. Now, this one can be a little tricky, okay? Because the Greek word for all things is all things, all right? So that means equals everything. That means all the things, your stupid mistakes, your failures, your sins. It means even that divorce, those miscarriages, that bankruptcy, even that cancer, even that hurt, and even that thing that nobody else even knows about. That's everything. It's all things, the good, the bad, the light, the dark. All those things can be used for his glory, everything. Now, let's establish this. Are all things from God? The answer is no. Because we live in a sinful, broken world, and ultimately because God has given us free will, that we don't always have to do the quote-unquote right thing. So there are times that we have done things that are against God's will, not all things. So we have made a choice to sin. We have been damaged by the sins of others. We have been hurt by their sins. So understand that we live in a broken and sin-filled and even evil world. And so that doesn't mean that God can't use our baggage, that God can't use our issues, that the understanding that God wants to use them for his glory. We're going to dig into this a little bit more because that's a touchy subject. Going, hey, how does God use all things? Remember, all things aren't from God, but God can use all things. All right, then those who love him. Now, for God works for the good. So let's go to the good. Sorry, I jumped ahead. That ultimately that we all have a grand design, and it's simply this, is that you would live out this shape. That God created you with a mission and with a purpose, that he has uniquely given you shapes and passions and abilities and personalities and experiences, that he has a great design for your life. And there's not accidents and there's not karma, but understanding there is purpose behind everything that he wants to see happen. Now, there are things that happen to you that he does not wish to happen to you, but that's a part of free will. Some of it we chose. Sometimes others people sin. We have fallen into that trap. But understanding that he wants to use that for our good and his glory. You can just study the life of Joseph if you really want to dig into this. Remember, his brothers hate him. They sell him off into slavery. He goes into prison. He kind of works his way out of that. Ultimately, then he's accused of rape that never happened. He's thrown back into prison. He goes through all these things, and ultimately at the end, he looks back at his life, and God had put him in a place to accomplish only what Joseph could accomplish. Why? Because he had a grand design, not that his brothers would hate him, not that he would be accused of rape, but ultimately the idea that he would be in this place to basically save the nation of Egypt and ultimately Israel from famine. Because guess who comes out of that line? King Jesus. That Joseph had that sometimes our greatest good can come from the most challenging places. I'm going to say that again. That sometimes the greatest good can come from the most challenging places. We know that as Christ followers on Golgotha, where Jesus dies in the crucifixion. Because from the crucifixion, we see the resurrection. That our mess can bring a message. All right? That our mess can bring a message. And then last, for those who love him, it's not everybody. We mentioned earlier about free will, that we have a choice of whether we submit to King Jesus, that we have a choice of whether we kind of, okay, hey, here's our life and here's our experiences, and we need to either submit to him and give those to him and allow him to do amazing good works, even out of our poor choices and our mess and our scars and all the things that we have. We can hand that to him to restore, or we can run away and we can be in our self-pity and we can wallow in our brokenness. But it says, for those who love him, again, that he can take our crisis and he can show Christ, that he can take those tests and reveal testimony. Of understanding that when we submit to him and we give our lives, for those who love him, God's going to do amazing things. But we have to submit to him and give our lives to him. Ultimately, the good that's found in that, when it talks about the good, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to get sick. It doesn't mean that you might even not even beat cancer. It might not mean that you get to keep your job. It may not mean that you get into that college. But the ultimate good is that we have forgiveness of our sin and our past experiences of brokenness, and that we've been adopted into the family of God. That's the greatest gift that we can ever have for those who love him. And so if you're here today and you don't know that forgiveness and you don't know that story of adoption, we would love to talk to you more about that. Because it's the greatest experience that you can ever have. It's the greatest, because if not, the things of your life, you will look back and go, man, what could have God done with that? So again, we encourage you of that. So if you're here today. Now, let's kind of do a little illustration for you. And how many of you guys like cookies? Only a few of you. How many of you really like cookies? All right, there you go. Let's preach, all right? So we like cookies. So how many of you like to make scratch cookies? Anybody? Oh man, let's see if this all worked. Good, the eggs did not break. All right, so making cookies from scratch are a beautiful thing. We don't necessarily always have time for that, but when we do, it's a family affair, and the idea that you take all these ingredients and you put them together. We have the milk chocolate thing. These are good. Does anyone like use half of these and eat the other half? Anyone? All right, confession's good. All right, there we go. Let's get off our chest. The idea that we love these. But then we've got flour. Nobody just goes, man, I really just want to kill the half of this flour. Like, this is really good by itself. Or the idea of salt, and that salt really is good. And I know there's some of you weird people who like to eat raw butter. You know, we'll pray for you on that. But you like to eat raw butter. But as a whole, butter itself isn't really good by itself. And then we've got eggs. These are farm fresh eggs from our Taynor chicken house, all right? But the idea that you take these eggs, and when we put them all together in the bowl, that God does something amazing, and that he makes cookie dough. And that is from heaven, right? The idea is like, do we cook them? I don't really know. Should we just eat them all? But the truth is that when we look at all these things, is that God can take, you know, these four things of eggs. Oh wait, we got baking. I forgot the baking soda. We got to have baking soda. I didn't really know that you'd use that, but there, it says it right here. There's cookies right here on the back. I thought it took away smells, but apparently it makes good cookies as well. Baking soda. So again, we can take these 5 things of baking soda and flour and salt and butter and eggs, and individually they're not really that good. But man, you put some chocolate chips in there and God does amazing things, right? Amen. So this is kind of your story, is that there are things in your life that individually, they don't really make sense. They're not really that sweet. They actually are kind of disgusting. But when you put them all together and you add that one really, really good thing named Jesus, it's amazing what God can do. Some of you guys have been looking at your life and you've just been looking at what's happened to you. You've been looking at your life and you've been looking at the experiences that you've had and go, God could never use that experience, and God could never use that experience, and God could never really use that experience, and God definitely could never use that what I did in college. There's no way that would work. But what if you said, hey, you know what? I'm going to surrender this all to him in all the experiences I've been through. And you know what? I'm going to put a little Jesus in all of that and sit back and watch what God can do. So when we talk about shape, it's this idea of going, hey, what can God do with all these experiences? What can God do with the understanding of, man, he's taking all of the good and the bad and the ugly, and he ultimately wants to be about his glory and for my good. So for some of you, you just kind of need that mental picture. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of turn the page and we're going to, okay, well, what do I need to do with my experiences? Walt, you all right? Okay, I've got these experiences. You're telling me to put them all and then let's mix them all up. All right, let's do that. So what do we do? So 3 things. Here we go. The first is this, is that we need to embrace our experiences. We need to embrace our experiences. So it says this in Galatians 3:4. He says, and this is Paul writing to the church, and he says, you have experienced many things, and we in this room can all attest, and those who are watching, we can all attest that we have experienced many things. Now, were all those experiences wasted? I hope not. Now, remember what it says in Romans 8:28, all things, the good, the bad, the shameful, the right, the wrong, the happy, the sad. And that we can't run from our past. We can't run from those things that we're shameful of. We can't run from those things that we want to hide. Because ultimately, because of pain, here's what happens to our past. We deny our past. We ignore our past experiences. We discount our past. We resent our past. We revise our past. We even rewrite our past of going, those people don't really know my past, so I don't really need to share my past with them. Yet here's what God says. He says, look, he says, if you are in denial of your past, then you can't use it for my good. And we need to hear that we need to embrace our past in the sense of going, okay, what is it that I have been through, whether good, bad, shameful, and how can God receive glory in those things? Maybe your parents weren't that great. Maybe you weren't that popular in high school. Maybe you weren't that smart. Maybe you didn't get that job you wanted. Maybe you didn't get into that college. But ultimately, God's saying, hey, let's look back through those struggles, through those challenges, through those wins, through those successes. Let's look back and let's embrace that, because in order to use them, we got to remember them. We got to remember them. Now, I'm going to be real honest, especially in the world that we live in, and the stats that we show of sexual abuse and the stats that we see of addiction and the things in the homes that are happening right now as a foster parent. I see a lot of and hear a lot of bad things. There's some things that may have happened in your life and you need professional counseling. And we say that is a needed thing, because here's what most of us do is we push it down, we suppress it, we bury it. We never deal with it. And God says, first of all, that's not healthy. In Scripture, it says, take what's in the darkness and bring it to the light. That's where healing happens. That's where restoration happens. But because of that hurtful thing or that shameful thing or that thing that you did that you don't want anybody to know about, you're going to keep it in the dark. And we would say, no, bring it to the light. And if you need to talk to someone professionally, we would highly recommend it, because unpacking that and dealing that and finding healing is where we really begin to go, okay, here's the shape that God has given me. That it all works for His glory and for my good. Okay, well, let's unpack that and begin to see how can He get glory and how can He be good from that time that felt like hell to me. But we've got to unpack that with someone who, we talked about last week, with the personalities who have the gift of thinking. They have the idea of feeling that they want to share, and understanding that you begin to, okay, here's why I do what I do. Remember, we talked about that. We say, when we begin to answer the question of why I do what I do, that's when God begins healing and restoration. When I figured out why I'm a doer, because I had the idol of production. Once I figured that out and God revealed that to me, then He would go, okay, well, here's how you do less of that, and your identity is not in what you do, it's in who I am. Whose I am. So what is it that you need to do to embrace your experiences? Don't run from them, embrace them. And that may mean digging deep. But that's okay, because it says God is with us. There's understanding that we look back in John 13:7, Jesus says this. He says, look, there are things that are going to happen and you won't understand them, but later you will. And so many of us, as we go back and we go, oh, that's why I didn't do that. Man, I thought I was going to succeed. Walt told me to step out in faith and follow my passion and my desires. And I did that and it didn't work. Why? Or I didn't get into that college, or why I didn't get that house, or why God made me move to this city I didn't really like or love. And you look back and you begin to go, oh, here's where He protected me. Oh, here's where He revealed. Here's where He built that relationship. Here's where that healing started to happen. You look back, and as I heard in a podcast this week, it says, you can't connect dots without looking back. Now, we don't live in our past, but we need to connect the dots of being going, hey, here's where my experience is, and here's now where we need to, our next piece is this, is then we need to extract the lessons. If we're going to understand our shape, we've got to pull out lessons from what we've experienced, the good and the bad. Because if we just keep making the same mistakes again and again and again, then it's just simply a cycle. And God says, look, I don't want you to be in a cycle of brokenness. I want you to be in restoration. So what is it like to look back and to extract the lessons? 2 Corinthians 13:5 says this. It says, examine yourselves. So look back to see whether you are of the faith. Test yourselves. Or do you not realize this about yourselves, that Jesus is with you? Unless indeed you fail to meet the test. And ultimately, this is what Paul is saying. He's saying, look. He says, look back. He says, test. He says, examine yourself. Learn. Going, man, hey, here are the struggles in my life. And here's the pieces where Jesus wants to begin to bring those experiences together, ultimately for his glory and for my good. So we look at the benefits and the patterns and lessons. And so the benefits, hey, what did you enjoy? When was it that you were the closest to the Lord? Some of us go, man, when I was in college and I didn't have kids and I didn't have a job and I just had these 3 or 4 ladies I would meet with at a coffee house. There were those guys I used to meet with, and we go play ultimate frisbee and we talk about the Lord. Man, that's where I felt really close to God. Well, look back at that. You may begin to go, oh, that's why community is so important. Maybe that's what God wants me to do at Capstone. Maybe to get some people to start hanging out and begin, instead of listening, maybe I need to now lead. For others, hey, where did God fill your soul? Begin to look back. What were the benefits of some of the things you've experienced? What are the patterns? When did things go really well? Hey, when I was really praying to the Lord, here's the pattern that looked like. Or here are the failures, the pattern of failure. Man, here's where I kept falling on my face, falling back into that addiction, whatever. Begin to look for those patterns and say, hey, here's where I can learn that lesson. And then last is that lesson. What do you need to learn? Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. Just look at the story of Israel. Israel, in a trek that should have not taken that long, took 40 years. Why? Because they failed to learn. They failed to look back and extract the lessons that God was teaching them in the wilderness. Maturity is simply this. It's not how long you lived on earth. It's being able to extract lessons and meaning from everyday life. That's what maturity is. It's to be, hey, here's what I learned today. All right, I'm going to put that in my wisdom bank. Hey, here's what I extracted from that experience. All right, here's where I'm going to put that over here, lessons learned. That's maturity. When we learn from our past, when we learn from our experiences and everyday things, not the big grandioso things, but just simply everyday things. Hey, here's what God is teaching me. And so we see that. So we need to embrace our experiences. We need to extract the lessons. And then next, we need to employ them to help others. I really believe this is one of the biggest things of our experiences. How are you what you've experiencing blessing others? How are you serving others by what you have been through? When we learn that the purpose of life is not my happiness, but his holiness, we look at things differently. We look at opportunities differently. When we realize that our identity is not what has happened to us, but what Christ has done for us, then we begin to go, hey, my experiences are no longer what's happened to me, but what Christ has done to me. So now, okay, here's what now Christ wants to use through me my past experience of what happened to me. A lot of us, our identity is in what's happened to us, and they become our idols. Well, they did this to me, and my identity is in what they did to me, and we're in bondage to what they've done to us. Or this is what I did, and now I feel so guilty, and there's no way I can ever get past that. And my identity is in what I have done, not what Christ has done for me. That we need to employ to help others, because when we begin to change, it's not more about my happiness, but it's about his holiness. Than the idea of going, man, okay, now I can use my experiences not in self-pity, but in security and confidence of what Christ has done for me, move forward. Who is the best person to walk with someone who's dealing with cancer? The person who's experienced cancer and radiation and the sickness that comes from that. Who's the best person to walk with someone who's dealing with the addiction to pornography? It's that person who said, yeah, I was in the same boat 10 years ago. And man, my life crashed. And here's how the things and what I had to do and the boundaries I had to put on myself to get past that addiction. Who's the best person to walk with someone who's dealing and raising a child with special needs? Someone who's raised a child with special needs. Who's the person to say, hey, to help us who have teenagers? I have a teenager as of 2 weeks ago. Y'all can pray for me on that. But the people who I'm going to look to are the ones who've raised teenagers and kept them out of jail, and hopefully. But the idea of going, I need people who are further along in me. Why? Because they've experienced the ups and the downs. They know what to expect. Yeah, we went through the same thing. Wait, you mean I'm not the only one? Yeah. Our first times moms who freak out about all the little things. We've been there. I literally walked home and I came home and Betsy had Luke and he was only a few weeks old and Luke was crying and Betsy was crying and I had to send them both to their rooms and we've all been there. Like it's a tough journey. But understanding that we have to use what we've been through in order to employ to help others. Rick Warren says this, God never wastes a hurt. God never wastes a hurt. He wants you to use them to benefit and bless others. God never wastes a hurt. And here's what happens when we bury those experiences and we don't unpack those experiences, but mainly when we don't employ those experiences to bless others and benefit others, to share, hey, here's the road I went down, I don't want you to go down. Hey, here are the scars I have that I don't want you to have. Hey, here's where I learned from our painful experiences from that hurt. When we don't employ that to others, when we fail to use that hurt, we only experience the pain. And that is not for the glory of God. When we go through hurt, sometimes of our own transgressions, sometimes from the benefit, sometimes because of others. But when we just hold on to the hurt and we only experience pain. But when we unpack it and when our identities are not what's happened to us, but whose we are, what Christ has done for us, now we use that hurt to help others. Now we just don't experience the pain, we experience blessing. We benefit others. So just don't hold on to the hurt because then you only experience the pain. God hates evil. He weeps with us. He suffers with us. He is with us in those darkest and most painful places. But when we trust Him and lean on Him and use our experiences, they won't be wasted. Because He's going to take the things that aren't good by themselves, that are hurtful, that have left you in pieces. And He says, put them together under the banner of the gospel. Put them with Christ. And let's see how Jesus can use those. That's what it means to embrace your experiences, not run from them. That's what it means, the idea that we need to extract lessons. Okay, God, here's what I learned in that. And then ultimately, hey, how do we employ them to bless others? Let's just not experience the pain of hurt, but let's learn from it. Let's grow from it. Let's bless others from it. So we're going to end this morning, and we're going to have a special guest come just share her experiences and just how God has used that. And so give it up for Madam Pass, First Lady Betsy Taynor coming up. So her experiences of living with me and having to deal with me, she's really going to share what that's done for her. But no, you guys sit back and hopefully you guys are going to be blessed by what she has to say. Go for it, honey.
Right, I am Betsy. I'm Walt's wife and mom to Luke, Eli, and Trevor. And Walt has asked me to share how God has used my life experiences to shape who I am today. So I have learned that sometimes it is other people's choices, even sinful ones, that will impact your life and shape who you are. In 1980, there was a young woman living in Columbia, South Carolina, and she found out that she was pregnant again. And she was divorced. She'd already had a baby, and she'd already placed another baby for adoption, and here she was in the same situation. She was depressed. She was in no place to parent this child. The biological father was in no place to parent. He wasn't a factor. And despite that, she chose life, and she made a plan for adoption. And in the spring of 1981, I was born. I was a special needs baby, and so I was actually placed in a foster home for about 7 weeks, the first 7 weeks of my life. I've never met them before, but I still feel like that they have, even their contribution to my life has impacted who I am today. Sometime in April of 1981, my parents and my brother were in Disney World on a vacation, and my Aunt Pam, my mom's sister, was watering the flowers at my parents' house. This was, of course, before the days of cell phones. The phone rang, and I still think it's funny that she answered her sister's home phone, but she did. And it was the agency, adoption agency, and they told her that after 3.5 years of waiting, that they had a little girl for my parents. So somehow she got in touch with them in Florida. I guess she called the hotel. I really don't know. I missed that detail in the story. But she got in touch with my parents in Florida. They cut their trip short, much to the chagrin of my older brother, and left Florida and drove to South Carolina. This part is still crazy to me. My parents were here. They can tell you how they felt then. But they left Florida and drove home and literally picked me up in Columbia on their way home from Disney World. So word spread through my aunt, and by the time they got home, this makes me emotional every time. By the time they got home, they had a full nursery in their house ready for me. I mean, they've been waiting for 3.5 years, so it's too hard to keep a nursery set up for that long, so they didn't have everything. But by the time they got home, they did. And I had a wonderful childhood. If y'all know my parents, many of you do. You know what great parents that they are. I graduated from Shannon Forest Christian School. Again, it's kind of funny how God uses your experiences, because that's where Trevor, our youngest son, that's where he goes now, and has met so many of his needs. I went to Furman University, and then I went on to law school. Ben Dukes was in the first service, and he told me he really appreciated the story, but I neglected to say where I went to law school. So I went to University of Georgia to law school. And for those who care, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. And after I graduated, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do with my law practice. I did several different things, and an adoption case came across, and I had that adoption and realized, I was like, oh, I like this. And it's just kind of funny, because you don't really know how your life experiences are going to impact you until you stop and look back, like Walt was saying. So I focused my law practice on adoption, and a couple of years later, I have a friend who is a client. They're actually from Fountain Inn. They live in Columbia now, and you're actually going to hear from them in a few weeks. But because they were friends, after their baby was born, I went to the hospital to be with them while the birth mom signed the paperwork so that they could adopt. So I go, Prisma Hospital, Columbia. I'm standing in the room with them. I'm holding this precious baby boy and looking at him and talking to them about adoption. I'm like, oh, hey, I was actually born in Columbia, and I was adopted, and I was born at Richland Memorial. And they're like, that's this hospital. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like standing there holding a baby who was about to be placed for adoption in the very hospital where I was born and placed for adoption. So God just uses experiences. He uses, whether it's adoption, whether it's the right timing and watering plants and answering that phone call. He uses experiences to shape your life. So Walt talks a lot about families being on mission, and obviously my experiences have they've not only shaped our personal family, the Taynor family, in foster care and adoption, but they've shaped the passion of Capstone and the passion for foster care, the passion for adoption. There's many of you who have either become foster parents, who've adopted, most of you have loved on the foster kids and adopted kids who have come through Capstone. And many of you, that wouldn't necessarily be the case, except for this choice that my birth mother made 40 years ago. And here's the thing, it wasn't a choice because she was a saint. It was really a choice because she was a sinner. And my story, Trevor's story, our son who's adopted, many of your stories reveal that God will use all of our experiences, whether good or bad, sinful or righteous. He'll use our experiences for His glory when we surrender our lives to Him. So, as you know and have heard, God has used my experiences to shape who I am today. And so my question is, will you allow God to use your experiences, whatever they may be, to shape you, to give you purpose, and to fulfill his mission? Thank you.
And that's the question we want to ask you is, are you allowing God to use your shape? That in 40 years, someone's going to look back, tell a story about you. Tell a story of how you asked them to coffee, and you just shared your story. Or you invited their family over, and you guys began a relationship, and they didn't know the Lord, and along the way, you ushered them from death to life, and they become Christ followers. That because you embrace your shape, will people talk in 40 years about what you've done? Because that's the beauty of the local church, is that God has put all of our shapes in here. And yes, that one of our passions is foster and adoption. Why? Because 40 years ago, a lady, again, not out of being a saint, but about being a sinner like all of us, she made a choice. And now many of you have made decisions in your life because of the passion and the shape of us starting the church 12 years ago. So what is it that you're doing, just not coming to church, just not checking boxes, just not going to small group, but really going, okay, here's where the kingdom's going to be impacted, not because I'm a great musician or a great Bible teacher, but just simply because I've embraced my shape. Because it's not enough just to go to church. The world doesn't need more fake Christians. We need more people embracing who we are in Jesus and giving him glory. So Tuesday, we're going to send you guys out just a form. It's going to say, hey, here's what my shape is. So hopefully if you've taken the surveys, you've kept notes, because we've kind of been anonymous in the way we've done that. We didn't want you to put your names because give you freedom in that. But we want you to go, hey, here's my spiritual gifts. Hey, here's my heart. Here's my abilities. Here's my personality. Here's my experiences. We want to see that. We think that's a beautiful thing that God has put together, all those ingredients and let's say, hey, let's stir it all up and see what God's got in store. Because we really believe to reach this city and transform it by the gospel, it's not because a guy talking on Sunday morning or listening to some songs, but it's going to be about you guys embracing that shape as missionaries where we work, live, and play. That's how we're going to see revival. That's how we're going to see transformation. That's how we're going to see the kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Begin to process that. I hope this isn't just a series where you guys go, man, that was a good series, and off to the next one. Let's begin to dig deep into our understanding of who we are, whose we are, and how God wants to use our experiences for his glory and our good. Let's pray. Lord, we come to you now, thankful of even of this testimony, a testimony of 40 years ago of thinking that there was desperation and out of depression. But God, you knew that over 4 decades later, we'd be sharing this story here, and that there would be foster families, and there would be adoption, there would be an orphanage in Haiti, all because of this. And so, God, I pray that we would not just bury our past, or we wouldn't bury just what we've been experienced, but God, that we would embrace it, because ultimately we embrace you, and we know that you can use anything for your kingdom and for your glory and for our good. And so we bring that to you now, and I pray we would just sit. We would soak in whatever the Holy Spirit's saying right now. God, we ask that question. God, what are you saying to us right now, and what are we going to do about it? May we have the ears to hear what you're saying and the courage to move forward with whatever it is as we understand and move forward in operating with this new word after this series, this new word that we're going to in our discipleship and our volunteering, this new word called shape that really can be life-altering when we embrace it. So God, may we not be satisfied with status quo. May we get in touch with our shape and how you created us, and God, how we can use it for your kingdom. In your son's holy name, amen.
We are so glad that you have joined us online this morning to worship with our Capstone family. Here was today's big idea. Our experiences aren't meant to be hidden, but used in order to learn from, help others, and point others to Jesus. In the midst of our experiences, we never think God could use our stories to help others. But remember, your experiences makes you you. They make up your shape and give you a roadmap of how God wants to use you for his mission and to fulfill your purpose. Take some time this week to write out your experiences and begin to ask the Lord how he can use your experience to serve God and others. Again, thank you for watching online. We would love to get connected with you. You can connect via our social media platforms, our website, capstonechurch.net, or we would love to see you in person at one of our future gatherings. You guys are sent out.